For some time I've had one of these Woodgas camp stoves. We use this outdoors for cooking in the wood. But I've recently got hold of this, which is its big brother. So this is a Woodgas fireplace. It works on the same principle. In the base of the stove is a fan controlled by this dial here to set the speed of the fan. Power comes in here. The air is drawn in through these holes in the base and then is injected into the stove around this ring of holes in the top and also around some smaller holes in the bottom of the stove. By injecting a small amount of air in the bottom of the stove, the wood is burned partially to a mixture of carbon monoxide, hydrogen and methane. This is the wood gas. This rises up to the top of the stove, and as the extra air is injected, that's when you get the flames, and that's what's going to give us the heat when this thing is lit to keep everyone standing around it warm. Now while the little wood gas camp stove is intended for outdoor use and therefore runs off a couple of AA batteries, this wood gas fireplace is intended for use in the garden. So it actually will run off a mains supply. I've got that here. So that just plugs in, and this came with different plugs for different countries. I've got a UK plug on it here. So what we're doing with this really is we're replacing a gas-fired patio heater with something that's burning wood. So that's good, because instead of burning a fossil fuel, you're burning a renewable fuel. Now of course, because this is running off the mains in this case, it is using a little bit of fossil fuel in that electricity. But the fan is drawing a very, very small amount of energy compared to the 16 kilowatts of heat that comes out of this thing when it's running at full power. However, you can also run this straight off a 12-volt battery. Now you can run this stove on several different types of fuel. Could be pellets made from sawdust, could be wood chips, twigs. It doesn't really matter as long as it's dry, and that's important that you actually put dry wood in this. If you put wet wood in, it's probably going to smoke. It won't light very easily. These are just some logs from our wood. Sweet chestnut's been seasoning for a couple of years, and I'll just show you a quick way of splitting it up so that it's in some smaller pieces ready for the stove to burn. Okay, you take an old piece of bike inner tube, tie it round one end of the log, put that end on the bottom, take a tool like this, which is called a froe and has a sharp edge there, then using an old mallet, make several lines cut across it. Turn it 90 degrees and do the same the other way. Take off the tube, and there's your wood ready to burn. And I've cut these logs to be just the right length so that they will go into the stove, leaving a bit of a gap at the top for the air to flow in and allow the fire to burn there. Now for kindling, I've got some pieces that I split up that are a little bit smaller, so I'm going to lay these across the top. You've got to make sure you've got enough pieces in there to get the fire going initially. Then I've got some even smaller pieces which I'll spread in, and I've also got some bits of birch bark, which is nature's best fire lighter, so I'm going to tuck them down into it a little bit, so hopefully these will catch and help the whole fire get going very quickly. So we've got the power unplugged at the moment, and as soon as I plug it in it's going to be on low, but we don't plug it in until we've got the stove lit, so I'm going to use a bit of this birch bark to get it going initially. As you can see, this lights very easily. I'm going to get that into the middle of the stove. Right, now I'll plug it in. It's just on low power, there's a gentle breeze blowing through there. Just going to turn it up a tiny bit. As it lights, you can gradually turn the airflow higher and higher towards maximum. Okay, we're at maximum now. Fire's established on top of the stove, but the heat hasn't yet travelled down into the bulk of the wood underneath. That's going to take a few minutes. I've added a few more bits of kindling onto the top of the fire, just to make sure it stays going until the bulk of the wood's lit. You do get a little bit of smoke at these starting up stages, just while the wood underneath is warming up, but as soon as it's going properly that'll finish. If you look carefully you can just see little jets of air blowing into the flame around that edge. It's been going for about 10 minutes now, and you can see we've already got a pretty decent fire coming off it, and I can feel a good amount of heat up next to it here. It's also noticeable now, it's been going for 10 minutes, that there's very little smoke coming off it. Now the fire's properly established, you can clearly see the wood gas burning around the edge there, as it rises up from the bottom and joins in with the airflow. You can see now that it's really going, there's not a trace of smoke coming off there. And you can see the gas jets coming in all on the edge of the stove. Despite the snow, I'm nice and warm here. This has been burning for well over an hour now, and still going strong. So you can just leave it to burn out, leaving the power plugged in. But there is another option. This lid is supplied, and you can unplug the power and put the lid on. It will now just sit there and smoke gently and gradually cool down, and you'll be left with a load of charcoal left in there that you can maybe use next time you want to have a barbecue.